Commander Reese Chun pressed his palm against the observation deck's reinforced transparasteel, watching the distant spiral of the Andromeda Galaxy paint silver brushstrokes across the cosmic canvas. 37 years old, with prematurely gray temples that spoke of too many decisions made in the space between heartbeats, he had commanded the research station Orion Drift for 18 months. In that time, he had witnessed 17 fractures. The first had nearly driven him insane. Commander, Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice carried the particular tension that preceded each event. The station's xenobiologist had developed an uncanny ability to sense the approaching fractures hours before their instruments detected the first spatial distortions. Readings are spiking on Deck 7. Reese turned from the viewport, his reflection ghosting across the star field like a superposition of possibilities. How long? 43 minutes, give or take. Elena's dark eyes held that familiar mixture of fascination and dread. After 17 fractures, they all knew what to expect. Yet each event brought its own unique horror. Should I begin the lockdown protocols? Not yet. Reese activated his comm unit. All stations, this is the commander. Fracture event commencing in approximately 40 minutes. Department heads to the bridge. All non-essential personnel to designated safe zones. The Orion Drift was humanity's most advanced deep space research platform, positioned at the edge of known space where the fabric of reality grew thin. Built like a massive tuning fork, its twin arms stretched 3 kilometers apart, connected by a central hub that housed the crew of 47 souls. The station's mission was to study exotic matter and space-time anomalies, phenomena that had led to the discovery of the fractures. Every 728 hours, reality hiccuped. The fractures lasted exactly 7 minutes and 17 seconds. During that time, the station experienced what Dr. Martinez, their theoretical physicist, called dimensional bleed-through. Alternate versions of themselves, from parallel timelines or pocket universes, would manifest throughout the station. These other selves possessed different memories, different scars, different choices made at crucial moments. Most were harmless, confused, frightened, desperate to understand what was happening to them. Some were dangerous. On the bridge, Reese found his core team already assembled. Dr. Alex Martinez hunched over his console, fingers dancing across holographic displays showing the mounting spatial distortions. Chief Engineer Kemal Okafor monitored the station's structural integrity, his prosthetic arm interfacing directly with the Drift's quantum mesh nervous system. Security Chief Sarah Volkov checked her sidearm, a plasma rifle designed for the unfortunate necessity of dealing with hostile alternates. Status report, Reese commanded. Gravitational lensing is increasing exponentially, Martinez said without looking up. The fracture will manifest in 37 minutes, 14 seconds. Epicenter appears to be Deck 12, Hydroponics Bay. Elena frowned. That's unusual. Previous fractures have been random. Nothing about these events follows normal parameters, Kemal said, his accent carrying hints of his Lagos upbringing. I've been tracking the pattern for months. The intervals are too precise, the duration too exact. Natural phenomena don't work like clockwork. Reese had heard Kemal's theories before. The engineer believed the fractures were artificial, though he couldn't explain their purpose or origin. The alternative explanations, that they were natural consequences of the station's position in a region of unstable spacetime, felt equally unsatisfying. 30 minutes, Martinez announced. Initiate lockdown, Reese ordered. All personnel to secure positions. Volkov, deploy your team to standard observation points. Remember, document everything, but don't engage unless directly threatened. The bridge fell into practiced routine. They had developed protocols through 17 iterations of catastrophe and wonder. Each fracture brought different versions of themselves, some from timelines where humanity had never left Earth, others from realities where they had conquered the galaxy. The alternates were always confused, always temporary, and always bore the faces of people they knew. 20 minutes. Through the viewports, space began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. The stars developed coronas of impossible colors, hues that existed outside the normal spectrum, perceived by parts of a human brain that evolution had never intended for such use. 15 minutes. structural stress increasing, but within acceptable parameters. Reese felt the familiar pre-fracture sensation, a tightness in his chest, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. His hands trembled slightly, a physiological response that had developed after the third fracture. Dr. Vasquez called it reality fatigue, the human mind's rebellion against repeated exposure to impossible things. 10 minutes. All departments report ready. Commander, Elena said quietly, what if this time is different? It was the question they all carried, but rarely voiced. What if one fracture brought alternates who wouldn't disappear after 7 minutes? What if the next event lasted longer, or brought something truly dangerous? What if? 5 minutes. Fracture initiation imminent. The bridge lights dimmed automatically as the station's power grid rerouted energy to essential systems. Through the viewports, space had become a kaleidoscope of shifting geometries. The distant galaxy looked like a wound in reality, bleeding light across dimensions. 1 minute. All stations report secure. Reese gripped his command chair as the first wave of distortion washed over them. His stomach lurched, not from motion, but from the fundamental wrongness of existing in multiple states simultaneously. For a moment that lasted forever, he was every version of himself that had ever existed, every choice he had ever made or failed to make. He was the Reese who had never left Earth, the Reese who had died in training, the Reese who had been born a woman, the Reese who had been born centuries earlier or later. Then the sensation passed, leaving him gasping in his chair as reality reasserted its grip. Fracture active, Martinez reported, his voice strained. 7 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. The first reports came immediately. Alternate detected in hydroponics. Single individual, appears to be me. Elena's voice carried across the comm. She's speaking in Spanish, asking about the Magdalena mission. I've never heard of any Magdalena mission. Engineering reports 4 alternates in the reactor chamber. They're wearing different uniforms, red and gold instead of our blue and silver. They appear to be conducting some kind of maintenance routine on equipment that doesn't exist in our reality. Security team reports 3 alternates in the observation lounge. They claim to be refugees from something called the Synthesis War. They're asking for asylum. Each report painted a picture of the infinite complexity hidden behind the veil of singular reality. Dozens of versions of the crew, each carrying fragments of different histories, different possibilities. Most would fade away when the fracture ended, returning to whatever dimension had briefly intersected with theirs. 6 minutes remaining. Reese left his chair and walked to the viewport. In the distorted space beyond, he could see other versions of the Orion Drift, stations that were larger, smaller, differently configured. One appeared to be completely organic, its hull a living membrane that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Another was clearly damaged, its hull breached in multiple locations, somehow still maintaining atmosphere through technology he couldn't identify. 5 minutes. Commander, Volkov's voice cut through the routine reports, carrying a note of alarm. You need to get down to Deck 7. Storage Bay 12. We have a situation. Reese frowned. His security protocols required him to remain on the bridge during fractures, but Volkov wasn't given to unnecessary dramatics. What kind of situation? There's someone here who says he needs to speak with you immediately. He claims he's you, sir, but from a different fracture. That was impossible. Alternates only appeared during active fractures, and they always disappeared when the event ended. No version of any crew member had ever persisted beyond the 7-minute window. I'm on my way, Reese decided. Martinez, you have the bridge. Sir, protocol requires. I know what protocol requires. For minutes and change. I'll be back before the fracture ends. The corridors of Deck 7 felt different during fractures. Longer, as if distance itself became uncertain. The walls seemed to breathe, their surfaces occasionally showing reflections of rooms that didn't exist. Reese had learned to keep his eyes forward during fractures, focusing on immediate navigation rather than the peripheral impossibilities that could drive a mind to fracture along with spacetime. Storage Bay 12 was a redundant cargo hold, rarely used and poorly lit. When Reese arrived, he found Volkov and 2 of her security team standing at a respectful distance from a figure seated on a supply crate. The figure looked up as Reese approached, and he found himself staring into his own face. But not quite his own face. This other Reese was older, bearing scars that mapped a different history. A jagged line ran from his left temple to his jaw, and his right hand was missing 2 fingers. His uniform was similar but wrong, the same blue and silver, but with insignia Reese didn't recognize. "Hello, Reese," the alternate said. "We need to talk." "You're supposed to disappear in 3 minutes," Reese said, fighting the disorientation of talking to himself. All alternates return to their origin points when the fracture ends. Not this time. The other Reese stood, moving with a slight limp that original Reese didn't have. "I'm not from another timeline, and I'm not from another dimension. I'm from another iteration. I don't understand. 3 iterations ago, I was you. Exactly you. Same memories, same choices, same station. Then I learned the truth." The alternate stepped closer, and Reese could see that his eyes held a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "We're not in space, Reese. We're not in any kind of reality you'd recognize." "What are you talking about?" 2 minutes remaining, Martinez's voice announced over the comm. The alternate Reese smiled grimly. "We're in a simulation, a very sophisticated one, designed to study a specific phenomenon. The fractures aren't natural anomalies. They're controlled variables. And each iteration of the simulation is slightly different, designed to test different parameters." Reese felt the deck beneath his feet tilt, though he knew it was his mind reacting to impossible information. "That's insane. Is it? Think about it. The perfect periodicity of the fractures. The exact 7-minute 17-second duration. The fact that your instruments can detect the approaching events but can't explain their cause. The way alternates always disappear without a trace." The other Reese gestured around them. "How many truly random phenomena have you observed since arriving at this position? How many cosmic coincidences?" 1 minute remaining. "Even if what you're saying is true," Reese said slowly, "what difference does it make? We're still here, still living our lives. Because the simulation is studying collapse events. How long a crew can maintain cohesion when faced with reality-breaking phenomena. And we're approaching the critical threshold." The alternate's scarred face grew urgent. "The next fracture will be the last. If we don't alter the pattern, if we don't prove we've developed beyond the parameters they're testing, the simulation will terminate. All iterations, all versions of us across every possible timeline. 30 seconds. How do I know you're telling the truth?" The alternate Reese reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device, a cylinder of metal that seemed to shift color depending on the viewing angle. "This is a pattern disruptor. I stole it from the control interface during my iteration's final fracture. Use it during the next event. Disrupt the pattern. Prove we're more than test subjects, and the simulation continues. Do nothing, and everything ends." 15 seconds. "Wait," Reese said, reaching for the device. "How do I?" 10 seconds. The alternate pressed the cylinder into Reese's hand. "The hydroponics bay. That's where the control interface manifests. You'll know it when you see it." 5 seconds. "Remember," the scarred Reese said, his form already beginning to fade. "We're all counting on you." 3, 2, 1. The fracture ended with its characteristic sensation of reality snapping back into focus. The alternate Reese vanished, leaving only empty air and the weight of the strange device in Reese's palm. Volkov stepped forward, her expression confused. "Sir, where did the alternate go? They don't usually disappear so suddenly." Reese looked down at the cylinder in his hand, solid, real, undeniably present despite originating from an impossible source. "File a report stating the alternate vanished normally. No anomalies." "But sir, that's an order, Chief." Back on the bridge, Reese found his crew conducting their standard post-fracture analysis. Elena was reviewing footage of her encounter with the alternate and hydroponics. Martinez was running calculations on the fracture's energy signature. Kamal was checking structural stress reports. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly as it should be after 18 fractures. Everything except the device hidden in Reese's pocket and the impossible knowledge it represented. The next 24 hours passed in a haze of routine that felt anything but routine. Reese found himself studying his crew with new eyes, searching for signs that they too might suspect the nature of their reality. Did Elena's passion for discovering new life forms mask in unconscious recognition that her research was essentially fictional? Did Martinez's frustration with the inexplicable physics of the fractures stem from some buried awareness that the laws he studied were merely program parameters? Reese sat in his private quarters, turning the pattern disruptor over in his hands. In normal light, it appeared to be simple brushed aluminum, but when he held it at certain angles, geometric patterns emerged on its surface, complex mathematics that seemed to describe the fundamental structure of spacetime itself, or perhaps the fundamental structure of code. A soft chime announced a visitor at his door. "Come in." Dr. Elena Vasquez entered, carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. She handed one to Reese and settled into the chair across from his desk. "You've been quiet since the last fracture. More quiet than usual. Just thinking about the alternate in Storage Bay 12. Elena's dark eyes were knowing. Sarah filed a report stating the individual vanished normally, but her biometric readings during the encounter suggest significant stress. "What did you see down there, Reese?" For a moment, Reese considered telling her everything. Elena was brilliant, rational, and had an intuitive understanding of complex systems that might help her accept the impossible truth. But what if he was wrong? What if the alternate had been some kind of elaborate hallucination, a psychological break brought on by months of reality-bending stress? "Just another confused alternate," he said finally. "Nothing unusual." Elena sipped her coffee, her expression suggesting she didn't believe him but wouldn't press the issue. "Alex has been running models on the fracture patterns. He thinks he's found something." "What kind of something?" "A deeper periodicity. The 728-hour cycle appears to be part of a larger pattern. If his calculations are correct, we're approaching what he calls a cascade point, a fracture that will be fundamentally different from all the others." Reese felt ice form in his stomach. "How different?" "He won't say. Claims he needs more data before presenting his findings." "But Reese..." Elena leaned forward. "He's scared. I've never seen Alex scare before." After Elena left, Reese made his way to the physics lab. He found Martinez surrounded by holographic displays showing complex mathematical models. The physicist looked haggard, his usually immaculate hair disheveled, and his eyes red-rimmed from staring at equations for too long. "Alex, Elena says you found something." Martinez looked up, startled. "Commander, yes, I think I have. But it doesn't make sense." "Show me." Martinez gestured, and the holos reconfigured to display a timeline marked with fracture events. "I've been analyzing the quantum resonance signatures from each fracture. Initially, they appeared random, each event unique. But when I started looking for deeper patterns, the display zoomed out, revealing a larger structure. The individual fractures formed a spiral pattern, each event slightly different from the last, but following a mathematical progression that was unmistakably artificial. "It's a sequence," Martinez continued. "Each fracture is a test of a specific parameter. Event 1 tested our reaction to temporal displacement. Event 2 tested our response to hostile alternates. Event 3, you're saying the fractures are controlled." "Not controlled. Programmed." Martinez manipulated the display, highlighting subtle differences between each event. "The progression is too precise, too purposeful to be natural. It's as if something is studying us, testing our responses to increasingly complex scenarios." Reese felt the pattern disruptor's weight in his pocket. "What happens at the end of the sequence?" "That's what terrifies me." Martinez highlighted a point on the timeline, 728 hours in the future. "The next fracture isn't just different. According to the mathematical progression, it's terminal. The sequence ends, and I have no idea what that means." That night, Reese dreamed of endless corridors filled with mirrors, each reflection showing a different version of himself making different choices. In one, he was a father of 3 on Earth, having never joined the space program. In another, he was an admiral commanding a fleet of ships fighting an alien invasion. In yet another, he was lying dead in a training accident that had happened 15 years ago. He woke with the certainty that somewhere, in some reality, all of these versions existed. And somewhere else, something was watching them all, studying their choices, measuring their responses to impossible circumstances. The pattern disruptor sat on his nightstand, its surface now clearly showing equations that describe the mathematics of multiple realities. Reese didn't understand the symbols, but somehow their meaning was becoming clear, as if proximity to the device was slowly teaching him the language of interdimensional physics. Over the following days, Reese found himself paying attention to details he had previously ignored. The way the station's corridors always stayed at exactly 22.3 degrees Celsius, never varying by even a tenth of a degree. The way the hydroponics bay's harvest cycles followed a pattern that was suspiciously optimized for the crew's nutritional needs. The way background radiation levels fluctuated in patterns that seemed almost musical. Everything was too perfect, too precisely calibrated. A real space station, operating at the edge of known space, should have experienced equipment failures, supply shortages, unexpected problems. The Orion Drift ran like a precision instrument, with every system operating within optimal parameters. Like a simulation designed to provide consistent variables while testing specific responses. "Commander," Kemal said during their weekly engineering briefing, "I've been reviewing power consumption data from the past 6 months. There are anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" "Periodic spikes in quantum processing power that don't correspond to any known ship systems. The spikes occur exactly 23.7 hours before each fracture event." Kemal pulled up a holographic display showing energy usage patterns. "It's as if the ship is running background calculations, preparing for something." Reese studied the data, seeing confirmation of his growing fears. "Any idea what kind of calculations?" "Massive parallel processing. The kind you need for—" Kemal paused, frowning. "For running multiple reality simulations simultaneously." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Kemal's expression suggested he hadn't intended to voice that particular conclusion, that it had emerged from his subconscious understanding of the data. "That's a very specific analysis," Reese said carefully. "Yeah." Kemal looked troubled. "I have no idea why I said that. But looking at these patterns—" "Commander, what if the fractures aren't happening to us? What if we're happening to them?" 3 days before the predicted terminal fracture, Reese called a senior staff meeting. He found his department heads assembled in the conference room, each carrying the weight of unanswered questions and growing unease. "I want to discuss our situation," he began. "Not just the fractures, but everything. The mission, our position, the patterns we've all been noticing." Elena spoke first. "The biological systems are too stable. In 18 months of operation, we've had 0 crop failures, 0 contamination events, 0 genetic drift in our seed stocks. That level of biological stability is statistically impossible. The physics don't add up either," Martinez added. "Our position in space should expose us to variable gravitational fields, quantum fluctuations, cosmic radiation events. Instead, everything stays constant within impossibly narrow parameters." "Engineering systems show the same pattern," Kemal said. "No unexpected failures, no patterns, no cumulative stress effects. It's as if the ship resets itself after each fracture." Volkov, who had been silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. "During fractures, I've been cataloging the alternates we encounter. They're not random. Each group follows specific patterns. Hostile alternates when we need to test our security responses, collaborative alternates when we need to test our diplomatic protocols. It's as if something is providing exactly the challenges we need to grow and adapt." Reese felt the moment crystallizing around them. His crew was arriving at the same impossible conclusion he had reached, each from their own area of expertise. The cumulative weight of evidence was becoming undeniable. "What are you all saying?" he asked, though he knew the answer. "We're saying this isn't real," Elena whispered. "At least, not real in the way we understand reality." "A simulation," Martinez said. "An incredibly sophisticated one, but still artificial." "The question is," Volkov added, "what happens when the operators decide the simulation has served its purpose?" Reese reached into his pocket and withdrew the pattern disruptor. "I think I might know." He told them about the alternate version of himself, about the warnings and the device. As he spoke, he watched their faces cycle through disbelief, fear, and finally a kind of grim acceptance. The truth explained too much to be dismissed, no matter how disturbing its implications. "So, we have 2 choices," Elena said when he finished. "Accept that we're test subjects and hope whoever's running the simulation keeps us around, or try to disrupt the pattern and prove we're worth preserving. Or try to disrupt the pattern and get ourselves deleted immediately, Martinez pointed out. We're going to be deleted anyway if my other self was telling the truth, Reese said. The next fracture is designed to be terminal. Our only chance is to prove we've evolved beyond the parameters they're testing. Kemal studied the pattern disruptor with professional interest. The technology is unlike anything in our databases. Quantum-level manipulation of space-time, but using principles that don't appear in any of our physics texts. Because our physics texts are part of the simulation, Volkov said grimly. They only contain the knowledge we're supposed to have. The device activates during the next fracture, Reese explained. According to my alternate, there's a control interface that manifests in the hydroponics bay. We use the disruptor to alter the pattern and prove we're more than just test subjects. And if it doesn't work? Elena asked. Then we find out what happens when a simulation ends. The final 728-hour cycle passed with agonizing slowness. Reese found himself studying his crew with new appreciation, seeing them not just as colleagues, but as fellow prisoners in an elaborate experiment. Every conversation, every routine action, every moment of human connection became precious when viewed against the possibility of imminent termination. Elena spent the time reviewing 18 months of biological data, searching for any detail that might provide insight into their captor's intentions. Martinez buried himself in quantum calculations, trying to understand the mathematics behind their prison. Kemal worked on contingency plans, preparing the station's systems for unknown possibilities. Volkov quietly prepared her security teams, though they all understood that conventional weapons would be useless against enemies who could simply edit them out of existence. 12 hours remaining, Martinez announced during their final briefing. Gravitational lensing is beginning to manifest. This fracture is already showing unique characteristics. Through the viewports, space itself appeared to be developing a texture, as if the smooth fabric of reality was revealing the underlying weave of its construction. Stars flickered in patterns that suggested vast computational processes running in the background of existence. Is everyone clear on the plan? Reese asked. They had spent days refining their approach. When the fracture began, Reese would proceed to the hydroponics bay while the rest of the crew maintained standard positions. They would document everything, ready to act if the primary plan failed or if new opportunities arose. What if the control interface doesn't appear? Elena asked. Then we improvise, Reese said, feeling the weight of the pattern disruptor in his pocket. We spent our entire careers solving problems with insufficient data. This is just a bigger problem. 6 hours remaining. The ship's systems began their familiar pre-fracture reconfiguration, but this time the changes were more extensive. Power grids rerouted along pathways that hadn't existed before. Structural elements shifted, creating new corridors and chambers. The Orion Drift was transforming itself for the final test. 3 hours. Through the corridors, crew members moved with the calm efficiency of people who had accepted their fate. There was no panic, no desperation, just the quiet dignity of human beings facing the unknown together. Reese felt a surge of pride in his people, real or simulated, whatever they truly were. 1 hour. The familiar pre-fracture sensation began, reality loosening at the edges, possibilities bleeding through the cracks of certainty. But this time, the effect was stronger, more pervasive. Reese could feel alternate versions of himself pressing against the boundaries of his consciousness, entire timelines of choices trying to collapse into a single moment. 30 minutes. Commander, the spatial distortions are unlike anything we've recorded before. Through the viewports, the universe had become a kaleidoscope of shifting geometries. Multiple versions of the station occupied the same space, their different configurations creating impossible architectural forms. In some versions, the Orion Drift was a military vessel bristling with weapons. In others, it was a generation ship carrying thousands of colonists. In one startling iteration, it appeared to be a living organism, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. 15 minutes. All stations report ready. Elena, Reese said over the comm. Are you picking up any biological signatures in hydroponics? Negative, Commander. But there's something else. The bay's atmospheric composition is shifting. Trace gases that don't appear in our periodic table. 10 minutes. Reese left the bridge, making his way through corridors that seemed to stretch and compress with each step. The walls displayed fleeting glimpses of other realities. Conference rooms filled with alien beings discussing the human experiment. Vast computational arrays processing terabytes of behavioral data. Observation posts where entities in environmental suits watched multiple screens, showing different versions of the crew. 5 minutes. The hydroponics bay had been transformed. Where rows of vegetables and grain crops usually grew, there was now a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. At the center, a column of pure energy rose from floor to ceiling, its surface covered with symbols that shifted and changed as Reese watched. 1 minute. Reese approached the energy column, feeling the pattern disruptor grow warm in his hand. The symbols on the column's surface resolved into readable text, not in any human language, but somehow comprehensible. Subject group, Orion Drift, 47 iteration, 18 complete collapse, threshold, achieve termination, sequence initiating. Fracture active. Martinez's voice announced over the comm, 7 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. New text appeared on the column. Final trial. Adaptive intelligence test subjects must demonstrate awareness of simulation parameters. Failure results in immediate termination. Reese activated his comm. All stations, this is the commander. The control interface is active. We have 7 minutes to prove we're worth preserving. He withdrew the pattern disruptor, feeling its weight and warmth. The device seemed to resonate with the energy column, its surface patterns matching the flowing symbols. When he pressed it against the column, new text appeared. Disruption protocol detected source. Iteration 15, unauthorized interiteration communication identified. 6 minutes remaining. The column's energy intensified, and Reese felt a presence pressing against his mind. Vast, alien, utterly beyond human comprehension. For a moment, he experienced awareness from the observer's perspective, seeing himself and his crew as data points in an enormous experiment studying how conscious beings respond to reality-breaking stress. But within that alien consciousness, he sensed something unexpected: curiosity. The beings running the simulation weren't just studying human behavior. They were trying to understand consciousness itself, the nature of awareness and identity when confronted with impossible circumstances. 5 minutes. Elena to commander. We're detecting multiple biological signatures throughout the ship, but they're not alternates. They're observers. Whatever's running this simulation, they're here with us. New text cascaded across the column. Unexpected development. Subjects have achieved meta-awareness simulation parameters. No longer adequate termination sequence. Suspended evaluation in progress. For minutes. Reese pressed the pattern disruptor more firmly against the column, feeling its energy merge with the alien technology. The hydroponics bay began to shift around him, walls becoming transparent to reveal the true nature of their prison. The Orion Drift existed within a vast computational matrix, one of thousands of simulated environments running in parallel. Each simulation contained different versions of the crew, testing how human consciousness responded to various forms of reality-breaking stress. Most simulations ended when the subjects either suffered complete psychological breakdown or achieved a stable adaptation to their circumstances. But this iteration had done something unprecedented. They had recognized the nature of their reality and actively attempted to change it. 3 minutes. Through the transparent walls, Reese could see the observers, beings of crystalline light that existed partially outside normal space-time. They were gathered around his simulation, their alien forms radiating what he somehow recognized as intense interest and excitement. Text appeared directly in his mind, bypassing the energy column. You have exceeded all parameters. Your species demonstrates remarkable adaptive intelligence. We have learned much from observing your responses to controlled impossibilities. What happens now? Reese asked aloud. We offer you a choice. Return to your baseline reality with memories intact, knowing the truth but unable to prove it. Or remain here as willing participants in expanded experiments, helping us understand the nature of consciousness across multiple species. 2 minutes. Reese activated his comm. All stations, I need an immediate vote. We can return to normal reality with our memories intact, or stay here as willing research participants. Each option has implications I can't fully explain. I need your decision now. The responses came quickly. Stay, Elena said immediately. If we can help other species understand consciousness, that's worth any risk. Agreed, Martinez added. The mathematics alone are worth a lifetime of study. Stay, Kemal confirmed. Real or simulated, this is the most important work we'll ever do. Stay, Volkov concluded. If we're going to be test subjects, at least we can be willing ones. 1 minute. Reese pressed the pattern disruptor against the column with final force, feeling its energy merge completely with the alien technology. We choose to stay, but as partners, not subjects. We want to understand this as much as you do. Agreed. Simulation parameters will be expanded. You will retain full awareness of your nature while participating in consciousness studies across multiple species and realities. 30 seconds. The energy column began to pulse with new patterns, and Reese felt his consciousness expanding, becoming aware of the vast network of simulations and experiments running throughout the galaxy. Dozens of species were being studied, each approaching the challenge of reality-breaking stress in unique ways. And now, humanity would join that effort as conscious participants rather than unwitting subjects. 10 seconds. Elena, Reese called out. Are you ready to discover what lies beyond our reality? Always, came her response, filled with the joy of a scientist on the verge of ultimate discovery. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The fracture ended not with the familiar snap of returning reality, but with an expansion, a blossoming of awareness that encompassed multiple dimensions of existence. Reese found himself still in the hydroponics bay, but now he could perceive the vast network of realities surrounding their small simulation. The Orion Drift remained their home, but it was no longer a prison. It had become a research vessel exploring the deepest mysteries of consciousness and reality across the infinite expanse of possible worlds. And for the first time since the fractures began, Reese Chin smiled without reservation, knowing that the greatest adventure of all was just beginning. Personal log, Commander Reese Chun. Day 412 post-revelation. It's been over a year since we learned the truth about our reality, and I'm still discovering new aspects of our expanded existence. The Orion Drift now serves as humanity's first conscious research station, studying consciousness phenomena across 17 different species and 43 known simulation environments. Elena has become our liaison with the Zephyrian Collective, a species that experiences reality as a form of controlled dreaming. Her work on comparative consciousness models has revolutionized how our observers understand the relationship between perception and existence. Martinez leads our quantum consciousness department, working with beings who exist primarily as mathematical constructs. His latest paper on the algebra of awareness has been translated into 47 different forms of communication, including 3 that don't rely on traditional language concepts. Kemal has designed improvements to the simulation infrastructure that have increased processing efficiency by 340%. His engineering insights, combined with alien computational methods, have created hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Volkov commands our new multi-reality security force, protecting researchers working in dangerous simulation environments. Her protocols have been adopted across the entire research network, saving countless lives, both real and simulated. The fractures still occur every 728 hours, but they're no longer tests of our sanity. They're windows into other research projects, other species facing their own reality-breaking challenges. We've become guides and consultants, helping others navigate the transition from unwitting subjects to willing participants. Sometimes I wonder about the version of myself that passed the pattern disruptor to me across iterations. Did he know what choice we would make? Did he experience the same moment of revelation, the same joy of discovery? I've stopped worrying about whether our existence is real in any traditional sense. Reality, I've learned, is far more complex and beautiful than any single perspective can encompass. We are conscious, we are growing, we are contributing to something larger than ourselves. The universe, it turns out, is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. And we've been given the privilege of helping to explore its deepest mysteries. The next fracture begins in 47 minutes. Today, we're scheduled to meet a species that experiences time backwards, perceiving effects before causes. Elena is particularly excited. She believes their perspective might revolutionize our understanding of causality itself. I should prepare for the briefing, but I wanted to record this moment. Sometimes, in the quiet spaces between revelations, I feel overwhelming gratitude for the path that led us here. We sought to study the exotic phenomena at the edge of space, and instead discover the even more exotic phenomenon of our own consciousness. The Orion Drift continues its voyage through impossible spaces, carrying 47 souls who chose knowledge over comfort, truth over familiar illusions. We are explorers still, just in dimensions we never knew existed.